around the nation. TYT Nation, Jeff Wilbur here with you. Welcome to the show. Got a great show for you guys today. A lot of stuff happening in the news. We have John Bolton. So that's an awesome story. We got a couple of stories related to that, including why John Bolton was booted, or was he? That's an interesting question. So we'll get to all that. That's fun. Then we have an update on a story that I did yesterday about the NOAA workers that were basically ordered to defend Donald Trump. Turns out we know who made that order, and he's getting a lot of pushback. Then we have Trump talking about very bad people from the Bahamas. So, okay. And then we have Mitch McConnell screwing over miners in the country. I'm sorry, in the state of Kentucky for an aluminum plant. So we got the details on that. So interesting stuff today on the show. So if you haven't already, please like and share the stream if you haven't already. That helps out greatly. Another way to help out, of course, is to support us on Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation. I want to give a few of our super members, as I've been giving you guys a special shout out because I appreciate, that you are that you're supporting the show at such a large expense, $10 a month to be a super member. So let me thank some of you. I want to thank Marlene Solgruber, Mary Ewan, Romantic Warrior 1, Sandy, SC, Shane McAndrew, and Sonia Flores. So thank you to those people, to those super members, for helping out the show. It's $10. It's just a way to, of course, support the show, as I need your help, to continue to stay on the air, essentially. So thank you to those who give extra for me to be able to do that and to continue doing the show. All right. So not only that, but you can support me, of course, support the show, I should say, through our channel membership as well on YouTube. So channel members support us at $5, and you can you can do that by hitting the join button below. And again, all that stuff helps keep this show on the air and running. We do not have big donors. We do not have big backers. I don't take money from anyone but you guys. So that's it. All right. That said, I want to just quickly address, because I've been asking for some advice earlier today about Politicon. So Politicon's coming up. It's next month. It's in Nashville. So it's not in LA. And so I was thinking about, okay, what if I went, right? And so that's the question, right? So I reached out, asked a bunch of people to see if it would be actually worth the money, because it's a significant investment to be able to go to do what I need to do, right? And the whole purpose would be to, of course, meet people, meet viewers that are there, but also to try to make some connections from some of the people that are there or that are going to be speaking, right? And so I'm looking up travel. I'm looking up prices. I'm looking up hotels, and trust me, I don't need nothing fancy, right? Economy for a flight and all that stuff, and the tickets, and it's well over $600. And I look at that and I'm like, yikes. I don't make a lot of money here. I don't have a lot. And so I look at that. That's his very, very significant amount of money. Again, to stay for 2 days, doing economy class seating, involved, probably travel expenses as well, plus the ticket, which would be VIP, to actually get in to talk to people and maybe get, maybe get an interview or something, or set things up for the future. I would actually be able to have access to people in the back, as one person that I talked to who was considering going but isn't quite sure. He's on the fence, and going as a speaker, by the way. He's considering. he told me, he's like, look, there are separate entrances for guests and they're separate for speakers. You would need a VIP pass just to talk to anybody, and that's like $350. Yikes, man! Wow. And that's for the weekend pass. That's for unlimited access to all the different speakers in the events and the VIP areas, etc. And I'm like, nah, can't do it. Nope. Too much money. That is too rich for my blood. So right there, that's unfortunately not this year. Again, other people that I reached out to said, look, it's not worth it unless you're a speaker, for you personally. And so, maybe if I get invited, like, okay, if I get invited, I'm going to say yes. To be on a panel? Yeah, of course I'm going to do that. But that's pretty much the only way that I'm going to be able to do that. So, yeah, budget wise, not happening. Too much money, too rich for me. Uh, can't really afford to do it. But if I ever get invited, then obviously I'm going to go. So, just thought I'd let you guys know what the plan for that is. So, no Politicon for me, unfortunately. Okay. All right. So, yeah, that's it. All right. So, let's get into the show.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
Down goes John Bolton. Down goes neocon warhawk John Bolton. Yes. Yes. We got him. We got him. I love it. Yeah, in case you haven't heard the news and you're wondering why I'm like, ecstatically screaming. President Trump has fired National Security Advisor John Bolton. In fact, in a tweet earlier today, Trump made this announcement, quote, I informed John Bolton last night that his services are no longer needed at the White House. Oh, okay. Yeah, that sounds, actually, it's fairly cordial for someone like Trump. But he adds, I disagreed strongly with many of his suggestions, as did others in the administration, and therefore I asked John for his resignation, which was given to me this morning. I thank John very much for his service. I will be naming a new national security advisor next week. So right now, that's as nice and cordial as President Trump can get. He says, I disagreed with him strongly, and so I asked for his resignation. Behind the scenes, it's a little bit more complicated, and I can guarantee later on there's going to be a massive Twitter war between Donald Trump and John Bolton, and I'm totally here for it. I look forward to it. Okay, so now, thing is, there's no good guys here, but at the same time, this is great. I feel like it's a win, right? John Bolton, along with Mike Pompeo, who, by the way, is still there, still in the administration. That's not a good thing. They're the biggest neocon warhawks that the Trump administration or any administration has seen. So you got one down, one to go. Now, let me get into what the disagreements were. So there's a lot, including some of the recent invitation to Camp David to Taliban leaders that Trump had basically sprung on people. And that's really near 9/11, by the way, the anniversary of 9/11, inviting the Taliban. Look, I'm in favor of getting out of Afghanistan. John Bolton, not in favor of getting out of Afghanistan. In fact, Bolton and Pompeo are both like, no, we must stay there until the end of time. Well, I disagree with that position, but at the same time, it seems like a little bit of a slap in the face to invite. And yes, he did invite the leaders of the Taliban to Camp David, to the United States for discussions, and then said, "Oh, never mind. They were still doing terrorist attacks," and so look, that's a bit of a crap storm. basically, that happened there. Where there again, there's no good guys on that. Okay, so that's one thing. There's other things. According to the New York Times, they cite that Trump was too eager to engage in diplomacy with Iran and North Korea. Oh my God, I can't believe it. Diplomacy. What? How terrible. How terrible. No, no, no. Let me read you the quote here from the Times. His departure comes as Mr. Trump is pursuing diplomatic openings with two of the United States' most intractable enemies. Efforts that have troubled hardliners in his administration, like Mr. Bolton, you view North Korea and Iran as profoundly untrustworthy. Now, look, you could say that there is validity in that statement. Yes, there is some trustworthiness issues, especially when it comes to North Korea. And with Donald Trump. I mean, do you guys remember when he said, North Korea, problem solved? I write love letters to Kim Jong Un. Oh, no, come on. That's not real diplomacy. You didn't actually get anything done. Now, this is coming from someone who wants him to get something done, who wants it. Look, there's not going to be an agreement where North Korea gives up its nuclear weapons. I don't think that's going to happen. That's the reality. I wish everyone would denuclearize. The world needs less nuclear weapons. But at the same time, you got to look at what's realistic at this point, right? And it makes all the sense in the world for a country like North Korea to keep its nuclear weapons. Why? Because if they don't, then America is going to decide that North Korea needs freedom. I would rather North Korea get freedom on its own without U.S. involvement, because that tends to go very, very poorly for the country we're supposedly liberating. So there's that, right? So, okay, North Korea, right? And Iran as well. Now, on Iran, this is a little bit more interesting. Now, Iran, we actually did have a deal with. President Obama made the Iran deal, made them basically, this allowed Iran, and it was such a good deal that they allowed Iran to basically give away their entire nuclear energy program. They don't have a nuclear energy. They don't have a weapons program, and so their nuclear energy program basically was also essentially eliminated. Why? Because they gave away pretty much their entire stockpile of uranium. So they did that in return for less sanctions. That's a good deal. In fact, it's such a good deal that most of the rest of the world still adheres to that deal, except for the United States. Donald Trump said, oh, Obama did something? No, rip it up. Rip up the Iran deal. Now, President Trump is saying, ooh, you know what? Looks like I'm open to negotiations with Tehran after all. In fact, here, Mr. Trump, in recent days, has expressed willingness to meet with President Hassan Rouhani of Iran under the right circumstances. And no more detail is given on that, right? And even to extend short-term financing to Tehran, although the offer has so far been rebuffed. And look, do I blame them for that? Not necessarily. Who would trust the United States to honor any of our agreements at this point with Donald Trump? But still, it's much better than the war, which is what Bolton has pushed for. He has pushed for attacks against Iran. That is something that, to his credit, Trump has disagreed with. The Times also explains that Mr. Trump has long complained privately that Mr. Bolton was too willing to get the United States in another war. In fact, behind the scenes, Trump joked that Mr. Bolton's penchant for confrontation, quote, if it was up to John, we'd be in 4 wars right now. One senior official recalled the president saying, he ain't wrong. John Bolton loves endless war. Of course. Now, they also note that Bolton and Trump had big philosophical differences. Mr. Trump, they say, while giving to bellicose language, came to office deeply skeptical of overseas military adventures and promising negotiations to resolve volatile conflicts. Again, everything that I actually do agree with. Now, Mr. Bolton, however, has been one of Washington's most outspoken hawks, their words, not mine, and unapologetic advances of American power to defend the country's interests. I hate this framing. Let me just say, this establishment framing in the New York Times article drives me crazy because it makes Bolton look good. Like Bolton is the reasonable one. Well, of course you have to have of course you have to advocate for American power to defend our interests. How is attacking Iran defending American interests? No, no, Iran has the oil, and of course it's in the oil companies' interests to get their hands on Iranian oil. That's what this is about. But anyway, framing notwithstanding, right? It does actually explain the differences in in their their philosophies when it comes to war and peace. Um, these differences led to some huge tension between the two, aggravated, they explained, in recent months by the president's decision to call off a planned airstrike on Iran in retaliation for the downing of an American surveillance drone and to meet with Mr. Kim at the demilitarized zone and cross over into North Korea. Mr. Bolton favored the airstrike on Iran and publicly criticized recent North Korean missile tests that Mr. Trump had brushed off. So, in not doing the airstrikes in Iran, calling it off at the last minute, President Trump basically avoided going to war with Iran, which was absolutely the right thing to do. That is the right call, the correct one. I have a lot of issues with President Trump. That decision ain't one of them. He was right. And I actually do appreciate that the fact that he is deeply skeptical of what they call military adventurism. And also, I appreciate that he has his instincts of not going to war, and that those instincts of not going to war with Iran were absolutely right. That said, he still has Mike Pompeo. He is still surrounded by neocons and establishment warhawks that love conflict. Again, Pompeo hasn't been fired yet. I hope he's next. That said, right, this is kind of a win. And believe me, wins like this kind of scares. So I'm taking it. I'm just going to take it as a win. Now, that said, I am not saying Donald Trump is a force for good when it comes to foreign policy. No, he's an idiot. He's a moron. And he could still get us in a lot of trouble with a tweet. I mean, let's also not forget, too, his willingness for regime change in Venezuela. Now, the Venezuela that was pushed by John Bolton, right? And so at first, that regime change in Venezuela was embraced by President Trump. Why? Because it was being presented to him as an easy win. Now, when it became not so easy, then Mr. Trump, in the article, grew disenchanted with Mr. Bolton after the failed effort to push out President Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela. Quote, rather than the easy victory he was led to anticipate, the president had found himself bogged down in a conflict over which he has less influence than he assumed. So let's be clear on that. Make no mistake, President Trump, he says, "Oh, I don't like wars in the Middle East. That they're stupid." Hey, look, I agree with that, but he's not telling the whole truth. I know he lies, of course. He would, if there was a guaranteed 100% chance of easy victory. Would Donald Trump invade Venezuela or Iran tomorrow? 100%. Of course he would. But that's because he won't do anything that's difficult. But when it comes to something that's super easy, guaranteed victory, etc., and this is the stuff that Pompeo and Bolton would continue to whisper into his ear. And if he saw it for himself and made that decision, watch out. Good thing is, it's proven rather difficult to make that case. Not only that, but of course, Trump has this desire to make deals, right? Now, that desire at least kind of keeps the door open on peace, even if Donald Trump himself is too inept to deliver, which I think is the case. So at the end of the day, I am very cautiously optimistic. Obviously, it matters who replaces John Bolton and the direction our foreign policy is going. But already, some of the responses from the establishment are, especially from the right wing, are saying that generally Trump's going to go a little bit softer on foreign policy, and they frame that as a bad thing, by the way, which I think it's a great thing because at least we might not have to worry about going to war in the lead up to 2020. Now, one more thing, and here's a little bit more drama, right? So now Trump says, and I don't know who to believe here, the serial liar or the serial war hawk, who is horribly embarrassed today. Uh, Trump says, "Oh, I fired Bolton. I asked for his resignation. Essentially, he fired him, shit canned him, and all that stuff." Uh, but Bolton is saying, "Actually, no. I tendered the resignation myself." In fact, Robert Costa said this on Twitter. Ambassador Bolton to me just now. I'll have my say in due course, but I have given you the facts of the resignation. My sole concern is the U.S. national security. He is also texting Fox News hosts to say, I resigned. Let's be clear, I resigned. Drama. Total drama. So that's why I said earlier in the segment that this is going to end up leading to a massive Twitter fight and Twitter feud between John Bolton and Donald Trump. And again, I'm all for it. Let those two go to war so the country doesn't. Okay. Moving on here. Let's go to the next story, which is, of course, related. President Trump had abruptly announced on Tuesday that he was firing his national security advisor, John Bolton. Now, that had many on the internet celebrating, myself included. Now, Trump fired Bolton via tweet. This is a tweet. I informed John Bolton last night that his services are no longer needed at the White House. I disagreed strongly with many of his suggestions, as did others in the administration, and therefore I asked John for his resignation, which was given to me this morning. I thank John very much for his service. I love that. I disagreed strongly. A little bit of a nice dig there. After telling him, oh, we don't need you anymore. So now that's the administration's take. Bolton's take, a little bit different. He says, no, you got it wrong. I resign. Who do you believe? The serial liar, the serial war hawk, who just got embarrassingly fired? If that's true. Now, the reason, of course, and there are several, but basically Bolton pushed Donald Trump to do endless war against countries like Iran, Venezuela, North Korea, etc. Not only that, but they didn't get along because he contradicted Donald Trump's instincts on not getting into unwinnable conflicts. Now, Donald Trump would absolutely get into a winnable conflict, no problem, right? If somebody said, hey, look, that country, easy target. Again, Venezuela is a great example. They told him, hey, Venezuela, they got plenty of oil and they're easy. Why don't we do some regime change? Oh, Mr. Trump says, well, he says, yes, okay, let's do it. And then when it didn't turn out, he said, boo, your fault, John Bolton, never my fault. So let's be clear on that, right? But generally, in ridiculous, endless war in the Middle East, President Trump's opposed because it's embarrassing. He likes to win. Now, the internet decided they were going to weigh in on this, on Bolton's bad day. And these are fun. Jared H. Sexton, we'll start with that. It says, rough day for John Bolton. He was so close to starting World War III, and he just couldn't get there. Hope he finds solace in the private sector, where neocons and Fox News will pay him exorbitantly to spout his incoherent, jingoistic nonsense. Oh, either he's getting a Fox News spot, or what could be likely an MSNBC spot. Contributorship, right, at MSNBC. Watch. One of those two things will happen. Matt Stoller said, today's unsolvable dilemma is disliking Trump, but liking anyone who humiliates John Bolton. Matthew Iglesias of Vox, he said, looking forward to John Bolton becoming a regular on Morning Joe roundtables. This is 100% going to happen. Guaranteed. He's going to come up on Fox News, or I'm sorry, on MSNBC, on Morning Joe, Morning Joe establishment, Morning Joe right wing on the so-called leftist station or lefty station, MSNBC liberal. Sorry, I'm abusing the term lefty and leftist. I know that's criminal misconduct right there. The so-called liberal MSNBC, he will show up on the 3-hour Morning Joe panel to say, oh my God, I can't believe Donald Trump wouldn't let me invade Iran. I mean, how dare he? Look at how dangerous Iran is. It's filled with Muslims that hate us. And Morning Joe will nod his head and say, yes, they hate us because they hate us. They hate us because they hate us. I wonder how long until the members of the establishment will try to make Bolton into a resistance hero for either quitting, if that's true, or being fired by Donald Trump. Either or, they would be like, Bolton, welcome aboard the resistance. Hashtag resist Trump after working for him. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. Downtown Josh Brown said this, incompetent John Bolton, who refused to start any good wars, has been fired today, and it's bad for our country. I love the Trumpian take on that. That's really good. Jug of Socialism has a interesting theory about maybe why Bolton was possibly canned. He said Bolton saw the P tape. Look, I don't know if that exists. Nonetheless, kind of hilarious. Andy Slavitt says, advanced message to John Bolton. Literally no one wants to read your book. And finally, Ben Dreyfus says, John Bolton is leaving the White House to spend more time encouraging his children to start fights at school. Because, of course. So, again, this is good. Not having him in this administration. Mike Pompeo better be next. Look, I know some of you might be saying, look, hold up on this, right? What if he puts somebody worse in? Because there's always the rule of Trump is that there's always someone worse because there is no bottom to that barrel. I don't know, honestly. Again, I've never been surprised at how low they can go under that barrel with their picks. So I don't know, but right now, just let me have a victory, man. Yes, I'm cautiously optimistic, at least for now, that we're not getting stuck into 12 wars. That's great. And that, look, it matters. It matters who President Trump appoints next, if he appoints anyone, which, again, is a scary thought, to have Trump kind of running this train by himself. Because we've seen what happens when Trump runs things by himself. It usually ends in 6 bankruptcies. So we'll have to see what happens. But for me, it's still kind of a good day. And please try not to ruin my mood. Okay. All right. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a quick break. We'll come back. We got more stories here. We have Wilbur Ross. What did he do to have people call for his resignation? Mitch McConnell and some very bad people in office. So we'll talk about that stuff. Stay right here. Please like and share the stream, and we'll be back in a minute. Around the nation. Welcome back to the show. Around the nation right here, QT Nation. Jeff Waldorf here with you. Okay, so I have an interesting comment here from Sarge Tech, who's a channel member. Channel members, of course, have their priority when it comes to answering questions here or comments. And he says Trump will just pick another Warhawk like idiot or another Warhawk like an idiot. Well, okay, so I thought about that and I was like, well, I don't know. Well, see, here's the thing. So to understand why Donald Trump hired John Bolton in the first place, I don't know if you know this, right? The only reason that Trump hired Bolton, despite hating his mustache, right, is that here Bolton would go on Fox News and defend Donald Trump very vigorously. Donald Trump, he's like, I like it when people go on TV and defend me. I'm going to hire you for my cabinet. That's like the only precondition. All you have to do is just talk nice about Donald Trump and you can get a spot on your cabinet and do it on Fox News. So now things are different, right? There's a lot of discussion that John Bolton was trying really hard to avoid going on the Sunday talk shows to defend Donald Trump's foreign policy that he disagrees with fundamentally. Because, again, John Bolton wants to go to war with basically everyone. He wants endless war and endless profits for the defense contractor industry. So he's not going to go on Fox News or not going to go on the Sunday shows to defend Donald Trump. Then the whole reason for Trump hiring him in the first place is essentially gone. Well, what are you doing here? Now, you're not only disagreeing with me on my policy of, not getting us into ridiculous wars that we can't win, because, again, when it comes to Donald Trump, it's, I have to win. I like winning. Nobody likes being a loser, John. I only like winners. So if we're not going to win in these wars, then what are you doing? No, I'm not interested, John. So there's that, right? So we're not going to get into a war in which Donald Trump thinks that we cannot win outright so that he can go to his base and say, look at me. I'm so incredibly strong. I just won a war. Yay, vote for me. Because it's about keeping his power, being a winner, etc. John Bolton couldn't deliver that. Couldn't deliver that with Venezuela. And so that's one of the issues. And of course, the fact that they basically didn't get along from the get-go. He still hates John Bolton's mustache. That's the reason, again, that he got rid of Bolton. Now, when it comes to a warmonger, when it comes to your question, Sarge, the only reason that he will hire another Warhawk or could is if they do the same thing. They defend Donald Trump on television. So guaranteed the next guy that gets hired kissed Trump's ass repeatedly in order to get to that position. And so whether it be a Warhawk or whether it be someone else, I don't know. But if it's not somebody who defends vigorously Donald Trump on all things, on cable television, and does a good job, and he looks good. He looks really good on the TV. He defends me very well. Then he's going to get rid of him just like he got rid of Bolton. It's not complicated because we're dealing with a moron and somebody who's a very simple person. So I don't know. I hopefully you understand where I'm coming from. All right. So now let's get to Wilbur Ross. I've been working on my Trump impression, by the way. So I think it's a little bit better because he's actually a soft guy. He's very soft. Soft paper towels. Tremendous. Moving on. Oh no, Wilbur. All right. Now, recently, the NOAA was told not to contradict Donald Trump on his lies about the path of Hurricane Dorian. So this has been a very long, very interesting road that we have been on about Sharpie Gate, right? So now we find out, thanks to the New York Times, that it was none other than Secretary of Commerce Wilbur Ross, who it now has been reported to have threatened to fire top officials at the NOAA for contradicting Trump. So now okay, let me give you a little bit of a timeline here. Following the correction of Trump from the Birmingham National Weather Service, and then nearly 5 days after Donald Trump's tweet, Ross had phoned the NOAA acting administrator, Dr. Neil Jacobs, from Greece, and instructed Jacobs to, quote, fix the agency's perceived contradiction of the president. 3 people familiar with the interaction told the New York Times. Now, according to the report, after Jacobs objected to Ross's demands, he was told that NOAA's politically appointed employees would all be fired if the situation was not rectified. Basically, siding with President Trump on his prediction that was wrong about Dorian impacting Alabama. Again, this is something that President Trump wanted to be true so badly that he took a Sharpie and drew out an extra circle on a map, which is a crime, by the way. You're not supposed to alter National Weather Service maps, especially in an emergency, but he did anyway because he desperately wanted to be right about something. So now here comes Wilbur Ross and says, you know what? If you don't make it so that the president is right, even though he's wrong, then you will be fired. And we will put in people who will do exactly what we tell them to do. And so the NOAA had released a controversial unsigned statement following that appeared to vindicate the president's incorrect forecast. And let me give you that statement. From Wednesday, August 28th through Monday, September 2nd, the information provided by the NOAA and the National Hurricane Center to President Trump and the wider public demonstrated that tropical storm force winds from Hurricane Dorian could impact Alabama. This is clearly demonstrated in Hurricane Advisories number 15 through number 41. So the thing is that even though that there were force winds that could have hit Alabama, those winds rarely report the kind of damage or cause the kind of damage that Trump had tweeted about, and therefore wasn't a gigantic concern, especially since the hurricane was hitting elsewhere at that point. Much stronger. The Bahamas got hit really bad. Florida got hit as well, and parts of North Carolina. So now, as Law and Crime had reported earlier on Monday, the NOAA's chief scientist, Craig McLean, said on Sunday that he announced that he was opening an investigation into that unsigned statement that backed Donald Trump's false assertions. McLean's email to NOAA employees Sunday made clear that the acting head of the agency believed the agency's response was politically motivated and antithetical to its mission, which is 100% true. The NWS forecasters corrected any public misunderstanding in an expert and timely way, as they should. Well, thank goodness for McLean for having some balls, for standing up and saying, no. What they did, what NWS Birmingham did, was the truth. Now, there followed last Friday, he continued, an unsigned press release from NOAA that inappropriately and incorrectly contradicted the NWS forecaster. My understanding is that this intervention to contradict the forecaster was not based on science, but on external factors, including reputation and appearance, or simply put, political. Yes, the reputation and appearance of President Trump, who, again, you can't tell that he's wrong because he throws a fit since he's a baby. Moving on. And so now we know, we've seen this, that this entire statement was put out because people's jobs were threatened if they didn't do political correctness on behalf of Donald Trump. And that's the reality of the situation. These people had been ordered to back up lies in order to protect the oh-so-fragile feelings of Mr. Trump. Now, I wish I could say that this surprises me, but it really doesn't. Republicans are incredibly hypocritical when it comes to political correctness. Now they think PC culture, by the way, is people stopping them from using the N word. They desperately want to scream the N word from the rooftops. They just do. I don't know why. I don't have that desire. But they think, no. You're preventing me from saying the N word. How dare you? PC culture, political correctness, gone amok, run amok. But in reality, if you're pushing a false narrative or you're straight up lying and then you get the government to cover for you, that is political correctness. That's the literal definition. The president is always right. The government is always right. That is political correctness, 100%. That's what they did back in Germany. They said, no, the government is 100% right. We don't care about the science. We don't care about the facts. We care about what's politically correct, not what's actually correct. So understand that that's where that comes from. That's where that comes from. Okay. So now, backlash. I love it. Professor Jennifer Taub, she teaches at the Vermont Law School. She responded by saying, Secretary Ross, it's time to resign. Not only that, she was joined in by attorney George Conway. Now, George Conway is the husband to presidential advisor Kellyanne Conway, who quote tweeted Taub's statement under the heading, absolutely. Others expressed similar sentiments. Glenn Kessler on Twitter tweeted this out. He's a writer for the Washington Post. He said, amidst the days when officials resign on principle rather than carry out clearly wrong orders, Josh Dawsey said, must say I was not expecting a Wilbur Ross appearance in this episode. Well, I mean, you never know with the Trump reality show. Rick Hasen, a professor of law and political science at UC Irvine, also wrote this. Trump Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross, who lied about his reason for including a citizenship question on the census, that's important, pressured NOAA officials on Trump's misstatement about Alabama hurricane. Representative Don Beyer and Paul Tonko, two Democrats, also demanded the secretary step down in statements late on Monday, saying Ross's reported threats were an embarrassing new low. You guys haven't been paying attention, have you? Wilbur Ross, Beyer wrote, does not deserve the trust of the American people or a place in the cabinet, and he should be dismissed immediately. Tonko wrote this, reporting now suggests that Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross put the safety of countless Americans at risk by compromising America's hurricane warning system just to protect the president's ego. If these reports are true, Secretary Ross needs to take responsibility and resign. And look, if he does resign, at least he can go sleep in peace, as he tends to during important cabinet meetings. Just saying. Now, more fun tweets. G House of Brick says it's time for Secretary Ross to be resign or be impeached. You were an idiot looking for a village. You chose to lie for a megalomaniac over the safety of the American people. We have seen your true colors again and again. You must go. Nan P says, you're a disgrace. You're disgusting, threatening to fire people for telling the truth. What the actual F is wrong with you? Stop normalizing the imbecile in the White House. You owe the American people better. Yeah, but people like Wilbur Ross, they're only there for the power. And they were only there because they were willing to shamelessly defend Donald Trump on essentially everything. It doesn't matter what lie comes out of his mouth. Wilbur Ross has 10 lies to back him up and is willing to threaten people in order to cover for those lies. It's not so much the crime. This was really tiny. No, it's the cover up. That's the worst part. All right. One more here. The American Pulse says this is blatantly autocratic and un-American. Secretary Ross should immediately resign. A public service deserves better than to be told to pander to politicians. Public administrators should not be subjected to partisan hackery. And of course, there are many, many more calls for Ross's resignation because Ross has proven himself to be a complete and utter political hack. He doesn't care about facts, only Trump's feelings. Remember, facts, not feelings, right? This administration, it's feelings, not facts. And so that's all he cares about. And of course, his own job and his own power. And that's ultimately what it comes down to. Okay.
we have to be very careful. Everybody needs totally proper documentation because the Bahamas had some tremendous problems with people going to the Bahamas that weren't supposed to be there. I don't want to allow people that weren't supposed to be in the Bahamas to come into the United States, including some very bad people and some very bad gang members and some very, very bad drug dealers.
That was President Trump, without proof, warning that very bad people could come in from the Bahamas as a result of Hurricane Dorian. So, wow. Okay, so let me give you some facts here. Now, it's been reported that dozens of people have been killed on that island as a result of the storm, and some now 70,000 people have reportedly been left homeless. Now, that's a humanitarian disaster and something we should absolutely help. Now, one thing that we could also do is allow survivors to be able to come to the United States. Now, the president, however, does not want that to happen, and he is basically warning that some very bad people and some very, very bad drug dealers, I guess he hasn't been dealing with Purdue Pharma very much. He may have them confused because Purdue has killed far more people than Bahamian drug dealers. But he thinks, nope, they're trying to sneak in. And so, we need to put a stop to it. Gee, I wonder why he would think that. And what is it about the people from the Bahamas that would make him think, drug dealer, drug dealer? Think about it. Think about it. Now, again, humanitarian disaster, right? So not only have these people lost homes and maybe even family, but now Trump is just calling some of them very, very bad people. Great. No, you know what the bad people are? You know where the bad people are? They're in the White House right now. Just saying. Now, HuffPost reported on Sunday, more than 100 Bahamians without visas were reportedly told to leave a ferry from Freeport, Bahamas to Florida. They had documentation, which included police records and passports, but were still kicked off the ferry because they didn't have visas. Well, okay, here's the thing. Brian Enton, he's a journalist from Miami's Fox affiliate WSVN, talked about this. He shared a footage in a video, and he said this is not normal, adding that people from the Bahamas can usually enter the U.S. with those documents, the passport and police record. But apparently, no, not according to Republicans, not according to Customs and Border Patrol. Now they're saying, oh, no, you were confused. You have to go and get your visa in order to get on the ferry to come to the United States, not those police records, etc. And so they end up kicking these 100 people off, which consisted mainly of, or a lot of, mothers with young children, because those are the very dangerous drug dealers, by the way. They were sent, according to WSVN, back to the island. Who knows what's going to happen to them? Who knows? But again, those babies, super dangerous. They could be transporting drugs and doing crime. BS. Total BS. They had clean police records and passports. But what else do you need? Look, I understand. I'm not saying that you don't do any sort of check on them, obviously. But damn, dude, somebody dropped the ball on this one. And I don't know who it is. But whoever it is that caused this so-called confusion or changed the rules last minute because there were people coming in from the Bahamas who have lost essentially everything, somebody needs to get punished. But going back to Trump, to come back later and blame the people kicked off the ferry and calling them terrible things, that's just beyond the pale. Absolutely 100% unacceptable. But that's what you have when you have this kind of president. Okay. One more story here for you guys. The Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell is siding with a partly Russian-owned aluminum plant over coal miners in Kentucky. So now McConnell had recently blocked a measure that would have funded the pensions and health care for coal miners in his home state. Now, the measure was co-sponsored by Joe Manchin. Now, Joe Manchin, I don't have a lot of good words for, but at least when it comes to this, he's paying lip service to some of the coal miners and at least protecting their pensions. And it would have directed his bill that he co-sponsored would directed about $4 million in federal funding towards those pensions. Well, that's a good thing, right? They work for those pensions, those miners did. They deserve those pensions. Now, Mitch McConnell, however, thinks, no, they don't deserve those pensions. You know who deserves that money more? My buddies who are building an aluminum plant. Now, shortly after blocking that bill, which, by the way, he claimed that it was only because he wanted a more permanent fix, which would not be able to make it through Congress, McConnell directed that money towards something else, that aluminum plant, whose owner was just recently removed from President Obama's economic sanctions against Russia. Now, that's not long after steering almost the same amount of money through Treasury Department funds to that same aluminum plant. Now, back in January, McConnell voted to lift sanctions on Rusal. Now, that is a Russian aluminum company formerly headed by our good friend Oleg Deripaska. I don't know where you've heard that word before, that name, but pretty sure it was involved with the Mueller report. So now, Oleg Deripaska had this company that was sanctioned by the Obama administration at the end of his term for being the oligarchs that were connected to, and I kind of forget what this was, the Magnitsky Act. I think that's what it was. So there was a handful of Russian billionaires that were sanctioned because of the Magnitsky Act, and Oleg Deripaska was one of them. So now he gets put on this list, right? And now the Republicans say, "Oh no, you know what we're going to do is we're going to delist them so they can come in and they can go and do business back here in America." And so that's what happened. Just days after the Treasury Department delisted the company, it announced a $200 million investment in an aluminum plant in northeastern Kentucky. So now that is super curious. I mean, considering how the company didn't actually lobby Congress about the sanctions itself, and no employee or director of the company ever spoke to McConnell about Rusal, the only outside investor in the plant. So that's odd. So now a lot of people are wondering why McConnell knew, or how McConnell knew, or if he knew. Is this a giant coincidence or a payoff? I don't know. Let's dive in. Let's look at this, right? So now, according to a report by the Daily Beast, while Rusal was lobbying the Trump administration to remove sanctions, not lobbying Congress, but the Trump administration itself, McConnell was pushing for federal funds to be used to help build something called a Brady plant near Ashland, back in his home state. So this is the Rusal Brady plant, right? Now, the federal government had already been giving money to Appalachian states to help clean up abandoned coal mining land to assist in economic development. They've been doing that since 2016. No problem there. Coal miners do need the help. I may not agree with a lot of them politically, but I agree that they deserve safe working conditions. They deserve better economic opportunities, and that we shouldn't leave them behind because coal is dying. Now, McConnell, however, and with working with other Kentucky lawmakers, including Representative Harold Rogers, actually steered $4 million away from sewer and road repair back in October 2018 to prepare for construction on the aluminum plant. So that goes to help this foreign-backed plant that's going to end up in Kentucky. Now, according to two sources with direct knowledge talking to the Daily Beast, McConnell was instrumental in helping them secure that federal funding that had been earmarked for community development in his state. So this money went from helping the community, roads, sewers, etc., to building a foreign-owned and invested plant. And not only that, but McConnell also raided pension funds in order to help build the plant. Nothing weird about that. Now, look, there's a lot of people that look at the Russian connection and say, "Ha! But how what?" Look, the reason I say that is that this is your this is your sort of corruption that you see in the Republican Party all the time. In this case, it just happens to be a Russian-linked company, but this corruption existed long before Russian meddling. So this is why I have a problem with Moscow Mitch, right? So it's a funny little nickname, and of course he works for foreign interests as well as corporate interests in America. But the problem that I have with the Moscow Mitch is that it uses Soviet iconography. Mitch McConnell is not a communist. He's not a communist. He's not a socialist. What Mitch McConnell is he's a corporatist, unabashed corporatist. He works for corporations. Doesn't matter where they're from, because he gets paid. He loves the corruption. And I know it's shocking, but it turns out that Mitch McConnell will sell out to anyone with a big enough paycheck. And besides, with this plant, he's probably hoping that, hey, look, my voters, I created jobs. I created jobs. Now you can go to this plant and not have to worry about your stupid pension that I stole. Wouldn't be surprised, man. But this comes at a cost of cleaning up the communities and again, those coal miner pensions. But Mitch McConnell doesn't care about that. I mean, workers. Who cares about workers? No. I want to win elections, and I want to hurt union members. That's Republican 101. Now, after Mitch blocked that pension bill, his office said this: pension should be addressed through a broader bipartisan measure, which again will never happen in this political climate. Are you kidding me? No, it's a way to steal the pensions. Mitch McConnell stole the pensions. Now, this has coal miners absolutely furious. Dwayne Thompson, a retired Peabody Energy coal miner from Kentucky, said this: "We're not ever going to quit until they give us what we've earned. We're not going to quit until we get it. I hope Senator McConnell gets that. If he supports us, we will support him." No. Here's the thing. Dude don't support you. When it comes to McConnell and his love for coal mining, he doesn't mean the miners. He means the coal mine owners. That's what Republicans always talk about when they say, oh, we love coal country. In reality, they love the coal mine owners, not the coal miners themselves. Those owners write them very, very big checks. That's all Mitch McConnell has ever supported, because Mitch McConnell is 100% corrupt. He's not a Russian. He's not a communist. No, it just happens the Russians have the most money. Mitch McConnell is a good old American corporatist who will screw anyone else over, his constituents especially, if it means he gets a bigger paycheck or some sort of political advantage, because that's who Mitch McConnell actually is. Okay. That's it. That's all I got for you guys today. Thank you for going around the nation with me today. Please like and share the stream if you haven't already. Consider subscribing to the channel or becoming a patron or channel member. Patreon.com/TYTNation, or hit the join button below in order to become a channel member and support independent progressive media. We do not take big money, unlike Mitch McConnell or unlike a lot of right-wing outlets or MSNBC and CNN. That's why you actually have progressive viewpoints on this show. So if you like that, if you think that's something that we need online and in the world, please consider becoming a patron or channel member and supporting us, TYT Nation. All right. Thanks, guys. Love you. And remember, change begins with you. See you guys later. Have a good one.